There comes a time in every man's life when he begins to see the world differently. The things that once excited him no longer hold the same power. The approval he once chased becomes less important. The drama he once tolerated becomes exhausting, and the peace he once took for granted becomes priceless. For many men, that realization arrives somewhere between 60 and 70 years old, after decades of working, providing, sacrificing, and carrying responsibilities. A man finally reaches a stage where he hopes life will become simpler. He hopes to enjoy the years ahead with greater freedom, greater wisdom, and perhaps with someone by his side. But what many men discover is that relationships later in life are very different from relationships when they were young. The risks are different, the expectations are different, and the consequences of choosing the wrong person can be far greater than most people realize, because when you're 25, you can recover from almost any mistake. When you're 65, every decision carries more weight, every year becomes more valuable, and every source of stress becomes harder to ignore. This is why many men enter relationships later in life expecting companionship, only to find themselves facing problems they never anticipated. Not because love is impossible after 60, and not because relationships are doomed to fail, but because the lessons that matter most at this stage of life are rarely discussed. Today we'll explore why many men regret certain relationship decisions after 60, the mistakes that quietly destroy peace, and what every man should understand before giving someone access to the life he spent decades building, because sometimes the greatest threat to a man's happiness is not being alone. It's inviting the wrong person into a life that was finally at peace. Chapter 1. After 60, peace becomes more valuable than passion. One of the biggest changes that happens to many men after 60 is not physical, it is psychological. The things that once seemed important begin to lose their power. The need to impress people becomes weaker. The desire to compete with everyone around him begins to fade, and the excitement that once drove many of his decisions is gradually replaced by something much simpler: peace. A younger man often believes happiness comes from gaining more success, more attention, more experiences, more excitement. But an older man has usually lived long enough to understand a different truth. Happiness is often about protecting what brings peace and eliminating what destroys it. This is why many men become more selective as they grow older. Not because they hate people, not because they fear relationships, but because they have learned the cost of unnecessary drama. They have experienced conflicts that drained their energy, arguments that accomplished nothing, relationships that created stress instead of comfort. And after decades of life experience, many begin to ask themselves an important question. Is this relationship improving my life or disturbing my peace? That question becomes far more important at 60 than it was at 30, because a younger man often believes he has unlimited time. He can recover from mistakes, start over, rebuild, and try again. But an older man understands that time is one of life's most valuable possessions. He no longer wants to spend years fixing problems that could have been avoided through wisdom. This is where many relationship mistakes begin, not because a man lacks intelligence, but because loneliness can sometimes disguise itself as love. A man may spend years living independently, enjoying his routines, enjoying his freedom, and then suddenly feel the weight of solitude, the quiet house, the empty chair, the absence of daily companionship. These feelings are natural. Every human being desires connection. But sometimes the desire for companionship becomes so strong that a person overlooks something important: compatibility. Because companionship and compatibility are not the same thing. Someone can remove your loneliness while also removing your peace. And that is a dangerous trade. Many men discover this too late. They enter relationships hoping to add joy to their lives, only to find themselves dealing with constant tension, constant disagreements, constant emotional exhaustion. Instead of making life easier, the relationship makes life more complicated, And at this stage of life, complications feel heavier than they once did. The Stoic philosophers often spoke about the importance of tranquility, not excitement, not endless pleasure, but inner calm, a life where a person is not constantly pulled into unnecessary conflict, a life where peace becomes a priority rather than an afterthought. That lesson becomes especially valuable as a man grows older, because there comes a point when protecting your peace is not selfish, it is wisdom. The truth is that a healthy relationship should add peace to your life. It should provide companionship without chaos, support without control, connection without constant conflict. And if a relationship consistently takes away a man's peace, he must honestly ask himself whether the companionship is worth the cost, because after 60, peace is no longer a luxury. For many men, it becomes one of the most valuable things they have left to protect. Have you ever sacrificed peace for companionship? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Chapter 2. Loneliness makes many men ignore red flags. One of the greatest dangers men face later in life is not a lack of wisdom. It is loneliness, because loneliness has a way of changing how people think. A man who was once careful can become less cautious. A man who once noticed warning signs can begin to overlook them. Not because he has become foolish, but because the desire for companionship can become stronger than the desire for caution. This is especially true for men who have experienced divorce, widowhood, or years of living alone. At first, the idea of having someone to talk to, share meals with, and spend time with can feel comforting, and there is nothing wrong with wanting that. The problem begins when loneliness starts making decisions instead of wisdom, because loneliness often whispers a dangerous message. Anyone is better than no one. But life teaches a different lesson. The wrong person can make a man feel even more alone than solitude ever could. This is why many older men ignore red flags they would have never tolerated in their younger years: disrespect, manipulation, constant conflict, controlling behavior. They see the signs, but they convince themselves that companionship is worth the sacrifice. Until one day they realize they traded their peace for the fear of being alone. A wise man understands that loneliness is temporary, but the consequences of choosing the wrong person can last for years. That is why patience becomes so important later in life. Because it is better to spend time alone than to spend your remaining years with someone who constantly disturbs your peace. Do you believe loneliness causes people to make poor relationship decisions? Let us know in the comments. Chapter 3. The cost of a bad relationship is higher after 60. One reality many people avoid discussing is that relationship mistakes become more expensive with age. When a man is young, he usually has time to recover, time to rebuild, time to start over. But after 60, the margin for error becomes much smaller. A bad relationship can affect far more than emotions. It can disrupt financial plans, create tension within the family, and bring stress into a stage of life that should be more peaceful. Many men spend decades working hard to build stability. They save money, plan for retirement, and create a life that allows them to enjoy their later years with less pressure. But the wrong relationship can quickly put that stability at risk, not always through dramatic events, sometimes through constant emotional strain, constant conflict, and the feeling of walking on eggshells in your own home. The truth is that peace becomes more valuable as time becomes more limited. That is why wise men learn to look beyond attraction and companionship. They ask deeper questions. Does this person respect me? Do our values align? Will this relationship bring stability or unnecessary chaos? Because at this stage of life, a relationship should not become another burden to carry. It should become a source of comfort, support, and mutual respect. A man cannot control every outcome, but he can be careful about who he allows into the life he spent decades building. What do you think is the biggest risk men face in relationships later in life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Chapter 4. The right relationship after 60 can still be a blessing. After hearing about the risks, some people may assume the lesson is to avoid relationships altogether. But that is not the lesson. The goal is not to fear companionship. The goal is to choose it wisely, Because the truth is that a healthy relationship can be one of life's greatest blessings at any age. A good partner can make the later years of life richer, calmer, and more meaningful. They can provide support during difficult moments, companionship during quiet evenings, and encouragement when life's challenges appear. The difference is that a wise man no longer chooses a relationship based only on attraction or emotion. He looks for qualities that become more important with age: respect, trust, emotional maturity, shared values, and the ability to create peace rather than conflict. At 60 or 70, a man has already lived enough life to understand that beauty changes, circumstances change, and emotions rise and fall. But character remains. The right partner is not someone who constantly creates drama and expects you to fix it. The right partner is someone who helps make life lighter instead of heavier, someone who respects your boundaries, someone who appreciates your experience, and someone who understands that love is not about control. It is about partnership. Many older men discover that the happiest relationships are often the simplest ones. There is less need for games, less need for constant validation, and less desire to prove anything. Instead, there is mutual respect, honest communication, and a shared commitment to protecting each other's peace. That is what makes a relationship valuable later in life. Not excitement, not appearances, not the approval of others, but the quiet comfort of knowing that the person beside you genuinely contributes to your well-being. In many ways, aging teaches a man what truly matters. At 20, he may chase excitement. At 40, he may chase success. But by 60, many men begin to chase something far more valuable: peace. And the right relationship does not take that peace away. It strengthens it. So the question is not whether a man should enter a relationship after 60. The real question is whether the relationship will add value to the life he has spent decades building. Because when companionship is built on respect, trust, and emotional maturity, it is not a mistake. It is a blessing. And that is a lesson worth remembering at any age. Have you seen examples of relationships that brought peace and happiness later in life? Share your thoughts in the comments below.